Folks,
Lord lead us.
hey, Father, what's up?
Hey, Grant.
Hey, so for all my viewers, this is my friend of mine, Father Mark. I always have a hard time pronouncing your last name. I'm not
It's
Polish. I'm not Polish.
not too hard. Niznik.
Niznik. Okay. So
Yeah.
you wrote a book like a year ago that was Amazon's bestseller, correct?
That's right. Yeah, it hit 5 categories, so it did very well.
Can you give the name of the book for anyone who might want to watch it, read it, or know where to find it?
Certainly. It's called 27 Messiah, and it's available on Amazon, of course.
Right.
And so it's a book about some real soul searching that I'm hoping that people will engage in, and it kind of helps you along with that process. It's like sort of a self-help book in that regard.
Yeah.
But it's really engaging, and I've gotten tons of great feedback on it. People seem to really find it, really helpful in their lives. And one of the things that's pretty good about it is that you can read a chapter, put it down, and come back later, read another chapter, put it down. So it's one of those things, kind of like a soap opera. If you put it down for 6 months and pick it
Right.
up,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're still in the game.
I mean, I usually hate soap operas. I despise Young and the Restless, although my grandparents loved that crap.
Well, it's not written in that manner. It's just
Right,
it has
right.
a effect. That's
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's your experiences? What are your experiences in Christianity per se? Where do you fit in the whole Church of America? And then we can get into the topic
Sure.
of today.
Well, actually, I've been a priest for about a quarter century now in the Polish National Catholic Church. I'm third generation in this. It's a breakaway church from Rome from about 128 years ago or so.
Yeah,
And the reason why people went independent was because they were being oppressed, and the Polish immigrants were thought of as second-class citizens, and they had no representation, meaning a bishop
yeah,
from Poland for the parishioners that were over here. So
yeah.
that's sort of how it started, but it
Right,
maintained a lot. It maintained a lot of its Catholicity.
right.
We weren't looking to break away for a while, but then they just kind of refused to hear the plea of the people, and
Yeah,
some of the people just said, "Listen, we're not going to sign over our properties to you without representation." And a bunch of independent parishes popped up, and eventually organized under Bishop Hoder and Scranton, PA, and here we are today.
yeah. It's I respect. Look, I myself am former Roman Catholic. I love a lot of things about the church, but I hate its politics.
Oh gosh, yeah, you can't really get away from politics in churches these days. That's for sure,
Yeah,
and
and
it's been like that for a long time.
yeah. And that's where this is where our podcast will be about today. We're talking about how American Christianity has screwed up and how American politics has really, well, influenced the way Christianity has been shaped and twisted, but also for both good and bad. Christianity is a very unique thing, and you know more about that than I do. I mean, you want to start us off talking about it too bit?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, let's highlight maybe just a few things for the folks that are listening out there, because like you were saying, Christianity has had a real significant influence on our culture, our laws, our moral values.
Yeah,
Um, and there have certainly been segments of Christianity which really led people down a path that really wasn't Christ centered to begin with, and
yeah,
looking to gain in power and such. So
right,
I would say probably the first and most maybe most important aspect of all was the complicity of religion in slavery and racism.
yeah,
Uh, the European settlers, when they brought Christianity, to the Americas with their economic interest, which of course
yeah,
included enslaving Africans to work on their plantations. And they
yeah,
used like biblical passages were just misused to justify slavery, especially like Ephesians 6:5,
Yeah.
slaves obey your masters, and we see Christian denominations, especially in the South, that defended slavery.
Right.
They were looking at it and tried to defend it as part of the natural order ordained by God, and
Yeah.
that was just and then the churches split over slavery.
Right.
So you saw like formation of some of the denominational churches, like the Southern Baptist Convention. I think it was around 1845 or
Yeah.
so, and they explicitly supported slavery, and then the
Right.
Northern Baptist Convention was opposed to it. So
And
I'm sorry.
yeah, let's not even get started on the founding fathers in that one. Let's not even get started on Jefferson when in the.
I just moved past all of that to the churches themselves. So
Yeah.
and that's another 10-hour conversation with the founding fathers.
Yeah.
So if you jump over maybe to the Civil War,
Yeah.
we see a lot of segregation that was occurring, that was supporting racism, like the Jim Crow laws that were brought out, and racial discrimination
Right.
was where they were. The white separatist movement was for the maintaining white superiority.
Yeah.
So even today we see so many churches that are just racially segregated.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
I mean, it's not even like Christian churches. There's an all-white pagan church, I think, down in South Carolina that was involved in the January 6th riots, and they're based off white nationalist paganism. It's really interesting how ideas can warp and twist into new forms.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's very important. Important to denote such things. So, like you were just speaking about, like we see a rise in Christian nationalism like I haven't seen ever. And it's intertwined with the faith and racial and cultural identities.
Yeah.
It just really, trying to just snuff out any kind of reconciliation, with different Christian churches where your patriotism is above the Christianity itself, and
Right.
use patriotism to say you're not a Christian if you're not patriotic according to the rules of the Christian nationalists.
Evangelicals and Catholics are the worst about it. I mean, my background is a lot of trad Catholics I've dealt with in my neck of the woods. Try and say America was based in like Christian dogmatic thinking, and the church should have a say in like government politics. I'm like, you guys want to burn books and want to create a caste system around gender. I mean, when I look at traditional Catholics, I see a lot of the same things you're talking about. I mean, and it's ironic because the two sides hate each other.
Oh, yeah, truly. But but it's also a complete, ignorance and rejection of like the First Amendment of the Constitution.
Yeah.
They just what you won't. And there's no religion that's going to be, America's religion. But try telling that to the radical conservative Christians who say, no, this is a Judeo-Christian country, and founded, and of course it had influence, but it's completely it's an illegal thing to force that upon people,
right?
And that's what's happening, in many ways, and that's that. If you look back, you'll see that that even today kind of reflects the colonialism and cultural, trying to erase cultures, where back in the day, Christian missionaries, supported the governments that sought to, they were trying to, remember, quote unquote, civilize indigenous populations. By converting them to Christianity and suppressing, the native cultures that are there already. And, thinking they're fulfilling the Great Commission of Matthew, make disciples of all nations. But they were doing it through coercion, not invitation, not by making it safe. It was all coercion. So think about those consequences where Native American children forcibly removed from their families, and they were just thrown into Christian, boarding schools, and they were forbidden to speak their native languages or practice any of their traditions. So you look
Yeah.
at the government was partnered with Christian denominations to assimilate these people with their policies,
Right.
trying to commit cultural genocide. So
Yeah.
that's why you can't blame indigenous people today, with a reservation background that we forced them into,
Right.
to associate Christianity with colonization, oppression, and trauma. you know.
I mean, it's telling. You're either a very dedicated saint who's able to work for your own trauma and be a dedicated American Christian, or you're brainwashed, or I can only imagine the trauma and like how many Native American Christians deal with
Oh
so
God.
much.
Yeah, well, but give them all the credit in the world, because you have indigenous communities of people like reclaiming their cultural identities. You
Yeah, with the
know,
peyote tradition. Yeah.
they're integrating Christianity in ways to
Yeah.
honor their faith, and their
Yeah.
heritage. You
I
know,
mean,
yeah,
are you familiar
and
with the outcast tradition?
praise the Lord for giving them the wisdom and the
Yeah.
courage to do something like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Praise
and
him.
then
Respect him. Yeah.
I'm just jumping ahead a little bit. I'm just all of this and what you said before, just reminds me of how, you look at January 6th. You look at so much of what's coming out of the ultra radical, ultra conservative, right wing,
Yeah.
unfortunate, Christian movement who are they lay
Right.
claim. They think they have the corner on the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
and they do so through this whole idea of moralistic purity culture that they're involved in today.
Yeah.
So, and where the focus is like it's on personal sin. Like you could go back to the temperance movement, with alcohol or whatever,
Or
but it's all about premarital sex, personal sins, and that's their whole idea of what's moral and immoral. Rather than looking at like systemic sins, like racism again, economic exploitation,
right. Yeah.
poverty everywhere, abject poverty. There's so many kids. I deal with kids all the time, and there's kids going to bed hungry every night still, and there's kids without shampoo
Right.
or living out living out in tents and cars and under bridges and trying to stay at people's homes, and it's just
Right.
disgusting that they turn a blind eye to this while they're pointing their finger at your so-called personal sins.
And they hyper focus on your sexuality. They hyper focus on like anything. I think the first day I met you, you told me the
Yeah.
church and the government should stay out of the room of consenting adults, even if you disagree.
I always
or
believe
agree.
that.
Yeah.
The church and government have no business in the bedroom of consulting adults. Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Dude, I came from that kind of culture. It really effed me up for years, and yeah, it's gross. And back to what you're saying, yeah, we ignore a lot of the plight and suffering of things that are far more important, and we hyper focus on, I think, on sex. And like, I've been yelled at by a priest for smoking weed.
Yeah.
I think we hyper focus on like partying.
Which, by the way, I believe should be legalized recreationally throughout the country. By the way,
Same,
no problem.
same. Yeah, I have no issue with that.
But give it. Don't be getting in the car and driving.
Yeah,
just,
yeah. Safety warning.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. When I look at the personal issues, I see everything you're talking about. I mean, like, give consenting adults enough time; they'll learn from their quote unquote mistakes, where those are, and they'll form healthier lifestyles by the time they're 30. Whereas systemic sin is poverty, death, racism. Those things are much longer lasting and truly have much more of an impact. The
health issues, all of it.
Yeah, you feel what I'm saying here, right?
So there's such an influence of this purity culture, that everyone is all part of this legalistic mindset.
Oh, yeah.
All their moral codes over, like, Jesus Christ's compassion and grace. It's
Thank you.
All they care about is the 10 Commandments, and they ignore the Beatitudes of Christ. Can
you fill us in what the Beatitudes are for any Christians who might be unfamiliar, or anyone?
The Beatitudes that Christ taught were just, they were about humbleness. The meek shall inherit the earth. That you can find it in Matthew's gospel, Mark's. They're just beautiful teachings of Christ that talk about compassion, forgiveness, love, understanding, faith, embracing one another, not demoralizing people by lording over them with your whole idea that you're morally superior to them.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it's pretty tough.
yeah. I
And
mean,
it's
yeah,
just hypocrisy all the way through. You know,
yeah. Go
chur-
ahead.
churches and individuals that lead churches, they're condemning all these behaviors publicly, but they will not address like the corruption within their own ranks.
Yeah. I knew a priest once who on sermon on Sunday mornings would say, "Racism isn't a sin."
Yeah, what's one of the most terrible sins going? Racism. Because it's hate based, it's evil.
Yeah, that
You
says a
know,
lot about that individual. Damn.
well, pray for his soul because it's in jeopardy.
Yeah, and I.
So, but the implications of all this is that younger potential and existing Christians, like they reject. Thank God, a lot of them reject these legalistic approaches. And they embrace more of a, I don't know, I guess a justice orientation. That prioritizes things like love and inclusion, community care.
Preach,
Yeah.
preach.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. Like the churches are in such decline, because they've just held the church is a living body. It's a living entity. It's
Yeah,
supposed to be the body of Christ, but organic and living. Each person is a cell that helps, and when you take a cancer like just pure legalism and purity culture, and you ignore the systemic problems, and you become moralistic over God's justice, you're going to get rejected by especially young people who are onto you at this point. They're not
yeah.
buying that BS that's coming out of the churches today.
As much as I'll say this: I used to be part of a youth group in my early college years. That cult I was part of. They were so hyper focused on sex. They used it as a way of like controlling people and creating a hierarchy of holier than thou. And they said they're better than a lot of people, and like it just breeds a culture of superiority and like I'm better than you, I'm holier than thou. You make up all these extra biblical commandments that aren't in there. In reality, they didn't give to the homeless. They didn't love people. And you know what? I think you told me the prostitutes have a higher, better chance getting to heaven than the
That's
freaking
what Christ
Pharisees
said.
did.
That's what Christ said. Because people, they like this, they want to be uplifted by others, and they want to stand out, and it's their pride.
Yeah.
It's silly pride, and instead of just humbling themselves and declaring their own sinfulness and wretchedness and allowing God's grace to be part of theirs, they think they own God's grace, and I have it, and I'm favored by God, and you're not. And just that right there is the antithesis of Christianity.
Yeah.
What it's supposed to be.
I mean, a lot of
And,
the people they shame probably have healthier relationships and might be more loving and kind to their partner or partners than they are to theirs.
but for sure,
Yeah.
but the been politicized. It's like, I guess what it's turned into, like all right, political loyalty now. All right, that they look at political loyalty as a test of faith,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then fusing together that faith with nationalism, it leads to exclusionary policies and intolerance toward
Yeah.
a lot, religious minorities, people who aren't Christian, people who are different kind of Christians.
Eastern Orthodox. Yeah.
It's just, yeah, I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
On January 6th, the insurrection was like the worst of the worst. These
Yeah.
people, the people that are calling them patriots, that's like the worst ignorance I've seen going on with all this. They were a violent mob.
They were
That's
terrorists. They were terrorists.
absolutely,
They were,
domestic terrorists, and this whole, like, I'm pardoning all of them that came out of the president. I'm just like, oh man, you're really missing, you're just missing what's going on. And but all that does is that fuels that Christian nationalism even worse.
Right. Now you live in the South right now, if I'm correct, and you're
I
from Philadelphia,
Florida.
correct?
Yeah, I'm in Florida.
You're from Massachusetts, I believe, originally.
I am originally. Maybe you can tell that by some of my,
Yeah, yeah.
but I'm in the middle of the Bible Belt down here. I'm a minority.
So what's it like down there when it comes to like government, culture, and what does Christianity look like down there, and how does it intersect with all the other things?
I can summarize that really simply for you. There are people here still flying Confederate flags, on their property, their cars, and all of that. And God forbid you don't, and in the patriotic atmosphere that's down here is just, it's good, but it's just the only thing that's really going on. And if you don't support my political party down here, then you're not a patriot. Like,
Yeah,
you're not a Christian.
yeah,
And they demonize everyone else as like, you're baby killers. This is what they say: you're baby killers, you're murderers. And there's like single platform issues like this. But now they've moved. Well, it's moved into a little bit more than that, because they've taken the whole LGBTQIA plus community and made them into evil monsters as well.
yeah.
So if you have anything to do with any of this, any support of any of it, you're an anti-Christian in their minds, and they just shout you out as such. And I'm just like going, oh my God, you have no idea what you're doing to your own soul when you
Yeah.
marginalize people as such. There's no love. There's no love. It's
No,
missing.
I can relate to that. Once again, I keep using this cult as an example. I knew a Catholic church around here that fired a gay music teacher that's been there for like over a decade because he was openly gay.
Oh, I knew a music minister who had great voice, and he was singing this gosh, what was the song? Ray Bolt's song. And when that there was a famous song by Ray Boltz, and when he found out that Ray Boltz was gay, he refused to sing it ever again. It was just such a great, you know.
That's disgusting.
So yeah, it's just weird how the hypocrisy runs around.
Yeah, and what you've told me in the past, a lot of these Catholic ministers, and I believe, it's weird. I think I heard somewhere that the Baptist the Southern Baptists have a worse issue with, gotta be careful how I say this because of YouTube, child,
Sexual
child
sexual
abuse,
problems. Yeah.
child abuse.
Well, I mentioned that Southern Baptist Convention. They have as
Yeah.
many sexual abuse problems as the Catholic Church does.
If not
You
more,
know?
and people think that celibacy is the issue, which it is, but no, these people are going everywhere, and we gotta stop looking at the fact just because you're married, you're incapable of doing such an act,
Well, what ends up happening is the focus has been taken off the victims, the children, people who have been abused, and then
Yeah.
they try to make it look like, well, we're dealing with it, it's a problem, all the priests, and this is why that problem alone is why the Catholic Church began moving priests around to be. Like priests are not permanent in their parishes unless I guess they raise a ton of money there. But
Right.
if 7 or 8 years they move them around, and that was going on for decades and got exposed beginning like in the 80s.
Right.
And then,
Yeah.
but not just the church. That was the same in synagogues with rabbis. It was the same.
Really?
In
I didn't know Jewish people had the same problem.
They had some problems. The Scouts had problems. Education had problems. It was everywhere. But here's the big but. All right, this is what's really. We are clergy, and we're supposed to know better than everyone else. We're not supposed to be this. This is monstrous evil doings within our midst, our rankings. So, but what ends up happening? All right, so you got maybe 4,000 or 5,000 Roman Catholic priests across the board that were pedophiles, right?
Yeah.
So, which is a very small percentage, but still, that's still a lot, 4 to 5 thousand of them. And then what ends up happening is now, as I wrote in my book, every one of us that's wearing a collar is looked upon as, this potential monster,
Yeah.
where trust is gone.
I'm one of the minority of people that actually trusts clergy. I don't care if they're Lutheran, Anglican,
Of course,
or
we don't
Catholic.
know you don't know it by looking at their collar, but until you talk to them. But
Yeah, I trust clergy more than I trust most people, honestly, which is weird, but yeah,
don't get me wrong. There's a lot of great clergy out there still. There really is. And there's some great clergy out there, but
yeah,
the people that are in charge have really messed it up bad for everybody.
yeah. You're not wrong. I agree with you 100%.
And so so let's further what we were talking about, like some of the difficulties
Yeah,
that in where Christianity, or segments of it, I should say,
yeah.
went off the rails and awry. Here's, like, okay, you'll, as soon as I tell you, like think about the prosperity gospel that televangelists are preaching in the
Oh,
commercialization of Christianity.
James. What's his name? Something. Fuck.
Uh,
Josh.
Joel Osteen, you're
Joe
talking
Osteen.
about.
Yeah, he's. Yeah, and the Crystal
And
Cathedral.
Copeland, Copeland is the same way. He's a mega rich dude too, but
Yeah,
they've turned Christianity into a profit-driven industry, basically, and the preachers are promising like wealth and success if in exchange for your donations, and as long as you have enough faith, it'll happen. And what they do is they say, if you don't receive this, well, obviously your faith isn't good enough, and that's just sickening, because I can show you, for every one person that they display of success in the world, and they attribute it to their faith, I can show you 1,000 people with just as good, or if not even more, faith that never got a financial favor.
right.
That just so it's just such BS. And all it is a feel good cotton candy kind of service. I have nothing against these people personally, but I don't like what they do, because they'll allow people to go, into serious debt. They'll let them
Yep.
mortgage their homes,
Yeah.
and they're not going to turn around and help them after,
Right.
while they're getting on their yachts and buying private jets.
It's greed.
So
It's freaking greed. It's freaking greed. And you've told me in the past that's the greatest sin of all. I think you would say that's one of the greatest sins in humanity right now is greed.
it's one of them, because greed is ultimately idolatry.
Yeah.
So you can only serve one master, Jesus said. What's it going to be, money or God? You can't serve both.
Yeah.
People mistakenly think they can juggle both, but you
Right.
can't. You only get one. You
And
got to you got to pick one.
yeah.
And
And
and,
the,
and if you don't think you can pick one, you are picking one.
right. And there's nothing wrong with living a good life, or like I'm not saying like there aren't people with a lot of money who are good people. I mean, I don't like the narrative just because you have a lot of money you're automatically a shitty person. I don't like that narrative.
No, not at all. There are plenty of people out there that are well-to-do, that are philanthropic. There are people who are compassionate. There are people who quietly, have a lot of charitable action in their life. There are a lot of people that are well-to-do, that I like to say is, like, just share what you have.
Yeah.
Share it. So if you share everything you have, I want you to have everything.
Yeah.
And so there's this whole, but the good thing about exposing this, speaking about this, is there is some pushback right now against some of the mega churches, because of those lavish lifestyles that the top get to live.
Yeah.
There's because they feel this, they're not serving the poor,
Yeah.
or the oppressed, the downtrodden. They're being left. They're just being left on the curbside like garbage. So there is pushback. Thank God. It's
Yeah.
against some of that.
And of
So
course, yeah.
bringing like somewhat of a social Christianity, back to the world, where there's
Thank you.
helping people with service and keeping it simple, in that way, and then
Right.
it's as simple as like I have a woman that lives down the street, right? And then on Fridays we have our fish fry, and she comes up, and I make sure she gets a meal along with anyone else that shows up, before the end of the fish fry. Um, and it's just little things like that to just make sure people have something to eat. It's very simple. We serve 275 people at our fish fry. Let's put a little bit of food aside for those who are without, and when they show up, let's give them some. I'm not turning it into a soup kitchen, although that would be wonderful. But there is a soup kitchen, just a few blocks away.
Right.
So we try to support that as well. But it's just little things add up, and it's just
Right.
sharing what you have. So like a lot of times, a lot of people tend to focus on the rich as if you should be doing everything and so much more, while those that are just of meager means won't share anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
or regular folks with the middle class folks or wherever they're at, they just try to put it all on the rich to do their part that they determine they should be doing, and then I don't have to do anything, and I can
Right.
hide behind these criticisms of others.
Yeah, that you deal with far right extremists, I deal with far left extremists. They're definitely fit into that category, and they're both annoying. But
Oh, for sure. For
yeah,
sure. Yeah, you have extremism on both sides. You have far left extremists who shout like no other, put on great displays of protests and all of this.
yeah,
And at the same time they haven't shared a thing in their life with anyone else, for any reason.
right.
And they're just a bunch of loudmouths. And but there's so many more people that are in between that do a lot of great stuff. I'm not denying that. I want to encourage that. But
Yeah,
who gets all the attention, right, Grant?
the
Who gets
people
all
with
the
the people with the loudest mouths, the people who make the most noise. Yeah,
right? The people who make the most noise, who are the most extreme, because the people who are sort of more pragmatic, a little bit more moderate,
yeah,
we're not. What are we going to shout? We're going to shout, "Be moderate!" like
yeah. I
so,
unironically sometimes call myself a radical centrist just to piss everyone off.
I like, I like it. A
Yeah,
radical sense, yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So,
myself a moderate as well, So,
yeah.
I'm pro-life, but I'm not a maniac about it,
Yeah, similar. I
And
think there's plenty of exceptions and situation by situation. I think legalizing it was one of the worst things the court system ever did. And I don't judge people who've done it. I'm not in their shoes, I'm not in their boat. And I'm not going to say every woman who does it is like some stereotype. And if you've done
no,
it, look, we're all human, we're alive, and maybe what you understand what I'm trying to say?
I do, but there's a real radical. Um, there's this radical, hanging on to that idea of abortion as the single platform issue in politics with Christians, and they don't care what else you do. Like they're pro birth, and
Yeah.
like okay, well, where are all you pro lifers after these kids are born?
Yeah.
Like how many pro lifers will become foster parents or adopt?
Yeah.
It's just crazy. I mean, my wife and I, we've been foster parents before, and it's grueling. It's tough. We took teenagers, and worked with them to help them. So so I put my money where my mouth is in that regard. But
Yeah.
at the same time, they'll just turn their back once they're born. You're on your own. Good luck. But up until that point, they're fighting for the birth of that child. You know,
Yeah. I read your book, and
like there's still something noble about that,
yeah.
but it's not noble to turn your back on that child once it's born.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Uh,
You talk about this in your book. Pro life and pro choice is a binary argument that people use to put everyone into a pigeonhole.
for sure.
I really agree with that. I see both perspectives. You want to elaborate more on what what you were trying to say with that part of the chapter of your book?
Yeah, but the way that I go about my pro-life stance is, if I were to hold a picket sign, it would just say, "Please reconsider." you know, That's all it would say is please. I wouldn't, I'm not going to put a picture of a fetus being ripped to shreds. I'm not going to say they're murderers. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because women, you have no. I mean, you and I have no idea what women go through.
Oh
To
God,
be,
no, no.
So who am I? Who am I to make these determinations? For them. I'm nobody.
Yeah.
So I need to be empathetic. But yet at the same time, if a woman who is pregnant is coming to see me for counsel, well, I don't think she's coming to see me for counsel to say, oh, go ahead, have an abortion. I think
Right.
she's leaning in a certain direction, and that's why she's coming to me. So I will encourage her, to keep the baby, to begin with, and if she needs to give it up for adoption, then so be it. But
Right.
but but also to promise to try to be there afterward, for support, additionally.
Right.
So you have to take each individual. You can't just lay a blanket statement on all of it. Like,
Right.
the whole just doesn't work. It's just,
Yeah.
and it's forcing people to do certain things.
Right.
So
Violates their conscience. It violates their conscience and their situation.
but yet at the same time, I and it's these are my personal issues. I'm not in charge of women. I'm
Preach.
just personal issues. That's all I have. That and it's these are just personal opinions, and I'm not going to try to like physically stop someone from walking into an abortion clinic or
Right.
what, and I'm not going to deride them, and I'm not going to shout at them angrily and cast all these aspersions upon them.
Yeah. You once called the people that do that the real murderers.
Well, anger is murder, as Jesus said sometimes. So we have to be careful, with that.
Yeah.
But they'll claim it's righteous anger, but I'm just like, no, you're just
You're
yeah.
anti-life. You're anti.
Well, I'm just saying there's way more to it than people sort of proclaim,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah. Changing
Each
subjects.
each individual is important. Each individual woman needs to be respected, and
Yeah.
each individual woman has, like these, people make it sound like, okay, there's so many abortions that are going on. It's just like for so many women, it's just birth control, and I'm like, that's not true. Show me your interviews and show me how you came up with those statistics.
Yeah.
It's just true. But
Yeah.
people love to lay claim to such things, as if you know they're the biblical authority on life itself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they do that with the gay population as well.
Oh God.
and,
Yeah.
and it's just really really difficult. Like turning to that population in a second here, you look if you look, they use Sodom and Gomorrah all the time.
Yeah.
And in my book I was writing, Sodom and Gomorrah, the problem, it wasn't because of gay bars.
Yeah.
It wasn't because of loving couples of the same gender decided to be together.
Right.
It was worshiping a false fertility god, and the way that they were going about it, the ideas in Sodom and Gomorrah, the way they were going about it was that the older men would have intercourse with younger men, trying to steal their virility so that they could make babies. These
Yeah.
were heterosexual men with these younger boys,
Yeah.
trying to do it. And it was really about pederasty. Not, the word homosexual wasn't even in the dictionary until like the mid 1800s. It was
Right.
pederasty. It was all about that, which was like also an initiation into adulthood for young men, by older men in the
Yeah.
Greek culture, and that was going on. But we turn it into this. It's an abomination.
Right.
It's an abomination.
Yeah.
And you know what else is an abomination? If you want to really be biblical about it, it's an abomination for women to speak in church. Like those are the abominations. Like when a woman talks to me about that, I go, just you talking right now is an abomination if you want to be biblical about it.
Right. Yeah.
You look at the Bible, it's inerrant in a sense, but it was written in a certain culture, a certain time frame. People take it out of context all the time
Oh
today.
yeah.
You know,
Like, how many churches still have women having head coverings? Even the Catholic Church says that's no longer required. Even the Orthodox Church says it's no longer required.
sure. You
Head
know,
coverings, yes.
yeah, and churches will take cultural aspects and they'll turn them into religion constantly. Like we've begun Lent,
Right.
right? Tomorrow's the first Sunday of Lent. We just had good Ash Wednesday, and we just went through the first Friday of Lent,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, like I have my fish fry here because it works,
Yeah.
but you have so many people like not eating fish as if it's this religious, doctrine going on. Like that, I mean, eating fish, not eating meat, because it's a religious doctrine. All of a sudden, like this is what the church teaches, and I'm just like, no, dude. The reason why you don't eat meat on Fridays is it goes back to when the fishing industry was almost destroyed and ended in Europe, and the Queen of England made it a law that you couldn't eat meat on Fridays, that you had to eat fish, and she saved the fishing industry. That's where not eating meat on Fridays came from. A very
Right.
secular fishing industry, and then all of a sudden the Pope says, "Hey, that's a good idea. Let's make it a religious thing,"
Yeah.
and all
Yeah.
these not eating meat on Fridays,
And then
you know.
they're like, I can speak as a Roman Catholic here. They say they did this for centuries, and then like around back into they're like, oh no, it's no longer required. Just during Lent. I'm like, okay, so
Yeah,
sin is political now. Sin is whatever the Pope feels like, and that's really when I started questioning things in Catholicism.
sure.
It's ironic now the Church of London, the Catholic Diocese of London says, no, now you can't eat meat on Fridays anymore. You have to eat meat. You can't eat meat on any Friday because we're going back to that, so it's a sin again. So, once again, it's bureaucratic bullcrap.
Yeah, it's the whims of the leaders. That's.
Yeah.
And there's no real prayer and adherence to God's will with any of that. You
Yeah.
know, man-made, BS.
Yeah.
So, and there's so many rules that are like that turn into that legalistic, moralistic, purity culture once again, that just seems to override every aspect of God's true justice for
Right.
this systemic problems,
Yeah.
going on.
I
So,
think God looks more at people's heart and how they treat people, and they're more loving and kind. And I think someone who might be quote unquote not a real Christian but is loving and kind, truly at their core, I think
oh,
even that
yeah,
person sleeps around a lot. I think they're going to be more. God's going to look more favorably down upon them, the religious fanatics who ignore the dying person on the streets or ignore the homeless or outside your Newman Center. You know what I'm trying to say here?
yeah. Well, you're speaking about the Good Samaritan, to begin
Yeah.
with. That whole story. It's wrapped up in that.
Yeah.
And Christ uses examples like this all the time. God said, rend your heart, not your garments, for a reason, to
Right.
circumcise your hearts, you know,
Yeah.
because, what happened back in that time period, that everything was based on the law,
Right.
before Christ came, and you had to keep the law perfectly in order for salvation to
Right.
occur. But when Christ comes, all of a sudden he's this benign God who's all about forgiveness, love, compassion, and sacrifice.
And who do you
And
call out all the time? The Pharisees.
yeah, and he's going against this, purity culture with
It's
with
time. Yeah.
with these Pharisee scribes,
Yeah.
um, and he's at battle with them, and guess what? They killed him for it,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
tortured him for it, and that's not even too far away from what's happening today.
I
You
mean,
so when you see that far, far, far ultra conservative radicalism going on, they are today's modern day Pharisees.
yeah.
You know that are just condemning everyone for their moral codes,
Right.
just like instead of everything that Christ really taught.
I mean, I've met atheists who are better people and more Christ-like than Christ, not Christ, but Jesus freaks are, that Christians are. I met so many atheists, Buddhists, who are more in line with the teachings of Christ than most Christians I know, ironically. And I can name the amount of people who are, aside from you and my roommate, I can name the amount of people I'm friends with who are devout Christians on one hand. And I find more in common with the quote unquote non believers than I do with most Christians.
Well, because there so many non-believers have become non-believers because of just the filth and the spewing of garbage from believers. So it's like, if that's what you believe in, I don't want any part of it. I don't believe anything, because you're saying my salvation depends upon only if I agree with you, the way you're speaking. So
Yeah.
so they push people so far away that what's going to end up happening is you're going to have more and more non-believers because they reject the crap that's coming out of so many believers to
Yeah.
begin with.
Yeah.
And it's not just an intellectual choice, but it's one of like just logic. It's like, if that's your God, then I don't believe in God, because
Which is
you
so
say
sad.
that's who God is. So I don't believe that there's even a God.
That's
I'm,
yeah.
I walk away all the way. But and yet they're incredible humanitarians who are loaded with the virtues of Christ.
Yeah.
Loaded with his virtues: compassion, humbleness, so much of that. Just being helpful and considerate and
Right.
loving and caring and accepting, not judging. And so the Christian today is so good at rejection of others. And so it's all about exclusivity with this whole moral code today.
Yeah.
It's all about exclusivity, which is the definition of the word hate in the New Testament. It means,
Really.
yeah, hate in the New Testament. The definition of hate is exclusivity. You know,
Damn.
and the definition of love, agape, in the New Testament, every time is inclusivity.
Yeah.
So you have so many more loving people that aren't of the big brands of religion that are out there today. And so it's this whole natural progression to see, people walking out of churches and not going to churches. And, it's not just secularism. It's the church's ignorance and defiance of God's love by setting itself above people, you know. So and they use this to try to restore Christianity. They think they can restore Christianity through their forcefulness, and it's
Right,
like,
right, right, right.
that ain't the way to go about it.
This reminds
So,
me of Project 2025 and all the
oh
shit that they're trying to do right now.
yeah, oh gosh, yeah. I just
Go into
like
that if you don't mind.
I took, what, I took some time out and I watched the first five seasons of The Handmaid's Tale, right?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it's like very similar. And you're looking
Yeah.
at this not too far out of the picture, what is trying to be done by that Project 2025 and its influencers. So
Yeah.
it's weird because even today, even women today are still second class citizens or have been pushed back to that, through the Christian political network that's running government and churches still. It's still
Yep.
happening there. It's still happening. So
Yeah.
uh, so we see a lot of things that are problematic, and a lot of segments of Christianity that has really you know messed with Christianity and misused Christianity and taken scripture and manipulated it for personal agendas, for those that have money and power and look to retain that,
Right.
throughout.
Yeah.
So,
Where do you think the core of the current Christian right comes from, and what do you think caused it, and how do you think we can fight against it?
well, I'm not. That's a tough question because the core of the Christian right, I don't necessarily think are really the folks that are brainwashed, into the political nature of their brand of Christianity, because you have Catholicism, Protestantism, even maybe small portions of Orthodoxy, in there as well, but the core of the conservative is, I would say, is aligned um, against, um, like I'm saying, like against gay people, the LGBTQIA plus community. There is a they're white, by the way, and there's this underlying racism that's still involved, with, because you can see such a segregation that's still going on, where if people of color walk into all white, churches, they're not made to feel welcome in so many ways, and so that's why you have so many, like, people. I've heard conservative Christians like criticizing like black churches, like, oh, these black churches, they don't even want any white people in them, and I'm going, you have it backwards. What is wrong with you? You know, you're blaming the minority groups, the victims, for still worshiping where they can congregate without being, treated like second class citizens or third class citizens, or
Right.
whatever's harboring in your heart in a racial stereotype. Um, so it's this ignorance that goes along with it. So
Right.
there the core of the hard right evangelical group that's messing up Christianity is ignorant. They're ignorant, ignorant, ignorant,
Yeah.
and they think that they're smart, and they think, again, that they have the corner on it, and all they are is a bunch of parrots. They're just parroting political phrases, religious phrases. I can't tell you how many times I've listened to like idiots around here just go, the Bible says it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. You know, like that's just an example of the hatred that spews in different forms. Like that.
Right.
Actually, it's kind of down here in this Bible Belt, like there's this. I see this sometimes, and I have to deal with it. Like the people will tell me down here from hard conservative, you know, uh, religious groups, there'll be people out of there, individuals who will actually say to my face, I'll say, "Hi, I'm Father Mark," and they'll just go, "Bible says, call no man father. I'm not calling you that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay," you know, like, I mean, they're just spoiling for a fight. I actually had one idiot down here that I just said, "Hey, I'm Father Mark," and he goes, "Bible says, call no man father." He goes, "What do you think of that, Padre?"
God.
I'm just like, well, inside I'm going, I think your parents might be first cousins. I'm trying to figure this out. So that's with things like that make me scream ignorance. Grant. So and I feel for these people, because in their ignorance and their hatred, they're following the devil's path while they're claiming, I'm following the devil's path, and I know that's not true. I know that hatred is the devil's path. So,
And pride.
uh,
Yeah.
well, along, all of that,
Yeah.
so I, at the same time, I realize, I have to be a better example in my own life, so that I might help others, away and pry them away from, that Christian nationalism somehow,
Right.
because if you think about it, the good book, the Bible, the Scripture teaches us that our citizenship is in heaven. You know, and they think that God favors America. He wants their expansion. Like if you go back to the expansion movement of America and you look at the map of America early on, do you know how much we actually, stole from Mexico? You know how much we actually stole from indigenous people
I
that were
mean,
here and just rolled over them in the name of God and Christ, thinking we were destined, and like they make it sound like we're on Mount Horeb on the East Coast, looking into the land of milk and honey, and it's our right to go in and do it, because some ancestor of ours from America should have been there a long time ago, and that's
Just Smith.
it's craziness,
Yeah.
you know.
The last two things I want to talk to you about, and they'll be quick
Yeah.
before we end the video. The last two major subjects. Where do you think
Sure.
Christianity is done right in America? And where do you think we're doing right now?
Well, I think one of the things we've been, doing a lot better at is the pushback, against the televangelists and the mega churches to begin with. So
Yeah.
I think that's some of what we've been doing, that's better. I think that there's still there's still a lot of voter suppression laws that are out there that that disenfranchise and try to restrict black voting rights. I
Yeah.
think I think there's I think there's some pushback against that, and I hope that as we saw civil rights overturned in many ways, that I'm hoping that the pushback keeps happening,
Right.
in that way. I see that I see the teachings of just the idea of love over hatred that Martin Luther King Jr. pronounced, and led with this civil rights leader, through nonviolent resistance. I've seen a lot of that, being a really cool thing, inspired by Christ. And what did he say? Hate cannot drive out hate, only love
Yeah.
is able to do that.
Yeah.
So I think the reiteration of that in churches is a good thing, happening. There's so much that's like, there's a lot of soup kitchens out there that are really working hard
Right.
to try to help people, through churches, and even some of the churches with huge problems do really good things in the communities of the people still.
Right.
But that doesn't give you, exemption from responsibility and accountability, though, as well. I don't know if you ever heard of the nuns on the bus. You ever hear
I
that
have
story?
heard of them, actually. They're one of the few things I like about American Catholicism.
Yeah, they're like the coolest thing, I think
Non-activists! Non-activists! The non-activists in the United States are awesome! They're college professors, they're activists, they're
yeah.
doctors, they're...
For like the last 15 years, these nuns, they've been advocating, for social justice, healthcare,
women's rights, yeah. I wish you could... Yeah.
They're the embodiment of like charity, forgiveness. I guess you could call it radical hospitality in a sense, right?
Ordain them. How about that, Catholic bishops? Make them into deacons. How about that? Or make them to pastors or some crap. Do that.
Well, I'm all for women becoming deacons. It's very scriptural. There's a holy tradition about it,
Yeah.
So that's one part of what I'm talking about. How churches still. I'm not advocating for women to become priests and bishops, because I haven't seen the evidence in history about it. But let's at least get them to deacons to begin with, because it's there. This whole attitude that women were only deacons for modesty's sake down by the river for baptisms, that's hogwash. They were leading abbots. They had positions of authority during Christ's time.
They preached. They.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You tell me, Phil, what's her name? The deacon from Paul took about. If you look throughout Paul's writings, you see all these women pastors and like preachers and teachers, and you're telling me they weren't preaching? If they're evangelizing, they're preaching. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, yeah, just really amazing. And I like the impact of people like that. They have a good impact on society, through things like charity and service, love over fear, like we're saying, inclusivity,
Yeah, I think the Roman Catholic Church going forward should invest more into nuns and women lay pastors than it should invest into seminarians, honestly.
Why not?
Yeah, make them the public face of the church. Even if you don't ordain them, quote unquote, they would still bring in more followers than your priest would, honestly. Just saying.
No, yeah, there's no, I have great respect for the women who are priests in the Episcopal Church.
Oh, same. I go to an Episcopal church downtown in my hometown, Madison, and her name's Mother Bobby. She's awesome.
Yeah, sure.
She gives good sermons. I guess in closing, Father Mark, thank you for being on the show. I've really appreciated. And
No,
yeah,
it's my pleasure. You know, maybe next time we can talk a little bit about you know how the effect of like science, with the church has grown, and the
yeah.
things that, and I think that's one of the good things too. A lot of science
Oh
is
yeah.
has been a really good thing for Christianity,
Oh yeah.
uh, but not for those who are still in denial of science. Because
Yeah.
I mean, it's been unequivocally proven that if you look at all the top scientists, everyone is in full agreement that the Big Bang happened.
Actually, I
Now,
think one of
a
the
lot of scientists that can't, they say it's based on fact,
yeah.
and what we base on faith, I say, yeah, the Big Bang happened, but I believe that God pulled the trigger. So
It can't be the question of how of why rather than the question of it can't be the question of how rather than the question of why.
yeah, the question of how and why are just that's the how we'll never figure out, because you can't
Right.
you just it's there, it's unfathomable. There's no answer to how. you
Right.
know there's just some speculation or whatever, but
Right.
you know but why did God do that, as I attribute it to him, with the science really helping in that regard.
Yeah.
Because it's what he wanted to do.
I
And I
think
know
yeah.
he wanted he God's plan is so vast and so interwoven that I mean, you cannot imagine the mind of God. You can't imagine his mind, his intellect, his power, his omniscience, like I was saying, his omnipresence, being everywhere. He's outside of space and time. He's God. There was just God forever. Forever. So for me to try to speculate as to like why, well, the only place that I can really go is to what I know if I'm going to speculate, and I'm going to have to say it's because of love, because God is love, and he knew that we were going to be coming along at some point. His love for his son, his love for us who are co-heirs with his son to eternal life. So and our time and his time is way different. So as Scripture teaches us, but it comes from a place of love. Everything he created was good, but the moment you give good free will, well, we see it become bad.
Right.
So what was pleasing to him, because he's just so above. It's just a complete submission and wanting to serve him. It's you can't explain it away. The idea of why, but if you have to give it an answer, if you need an answer, then I would say the best answer would be because God is love, and he did it out of love. You take that however you want, run with it, wherever you want. But it's an infinite love that you can't. The moment you try to define even that, you make it finite. So
Yeah.
love never ends, as we learn in 1 Corinthians 13. Love never ends because God is love, and that's what we that's what we do right, and we need to continue to do right, and we need to expand it.
Right.
Making a T-shirt that just says "Love More." Like I want to get that phrase and people speaking that, thinking about it. Love more.
How about I get that as merch for my YouTube channel? That'd be awesome.
You can do whatever you want. I don't care who makes money on it. I just want everyone to think it and see it, and like I want them to read my book. I don't care about making money on a book. I'm not, I'm not trying to help save souls for profit. I'm not commercializing it.
Well,
Although
yeah.
got to get it out there somewhere, though. or somehow, I should say.
Well,
So,
thank you, Father. I really appreciate this conversation, and I wish there's more priests like you around here. I honestly do. God bless you. Thank you very much.
thanks for your time. Take care.
Take care, folks.